Today on Deandrea Hamilton Presents.
So there are some things that we're thinking about in terms of how we can reduce rates, and energy consumption is one of those areas that we're looking at.
I really love learning. And more than that, I'm a huge fan of sharing what I learn, especially if I believe it enhances the quality of life. Because who wants to live a life lacking in quality? So I'll show you the most interesting people, the most intriguing places, and the most impressive plans in and around our one Caribbean. Handpicked by me for a one-on-one chat sure to deliver on what matters most. My new show, Deandrea Hamilton Presents. Deandrea Hamilton Presents was filmed at Beaches, Turks and Caicos, an amazing all-inclusive luxury resort featuring 5 magnificent villages boasting the architecture and ambiance of Italy, France, the Caribbean, and Key West, all in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Thank you, Beaches, for your world-class hospitality. Thank you for joining us on another Deandrea Hamilton Presents. We have in the room none other than the Managing Director of Provo Water Company, Mr. Robert Hall. Robert Hall and I have had many a conversation over the years that I've been living in the home of my grandfather, the Turks and Caicos Islands. And because he's a Hall, and I'm a Hamilton, they often say the Halls and the Hamiltons, the August, the Phillips, the Forbes, and some other names. We're connected, we're related. Nonetheless, whatever it is, we are just so very proud of the man he is, the work he's doing, the team he has, even though lately Provo Water Company has come into the spotlight for not only some infrastructural developments that help water, but also some infrastructural challenges because of our exponential growth here in the TCI. So we thought we'd have him on. We thought we'd get him to talk about some of the work that they're doing and how it's actually maybe getting better, Mr. Hall. It's getting better?
We'll talk about that.
So tell us first of all about Provo Water Company. What's your team size? What are you guys up to? Where are you located for those who may not know anything about the company?
Well, currently our offices are located in Grace Bay, just across from Club Med. We've operated out of that office since the company started in 1997. We currently have a staff complement of about 35, 38 persons, both field and staff. We serve as Providenciales, although our license is for Providenciales in the surrounding keys up to Park Key. Currently, we only service Providenciales.
Yeah, and Providenciales is a lot to service these days. The island's popularity is just tremendous.
Yes.
And with it, it's not just growing the tourism and real estate sectors, but also the residential sector.
That's correct.
Yeah.
What we're seeing is, Grace Bay is kind of like the mega center of the tourism industry. But now with the explosion of Airbnb and villas, we're seeing demand spread more widely across the island. And some of that has impacted how we supply and how we operate.
Yeah, and I'm sure it presents a challenge from low flow to no water at all, to you having to make such a drastic call. What was it like in the room when you guys at Provo Water Company had to decide, oh my goodness, we're going to have to lock off water at certain hours if we're going to get through this season?
Well, that kind of a decision is one where you'd never want to have to make it. But if you have to, you know that you do it only because it's absolutely necessary. We've always pride ourselves on being able to prepare and plan for the future. We've been doing water master plans since 2006. So every 10 years, we're required to produce a new master plan to explain how we're going to supply the island. We've been doing those more frequent than that. So we've always wanted to stay ahead of the game to make sure that we have the infrastructure that's going to meet the demand that the island would eventually want. And so that's what we've always done. It so happened that this year has outpaced anything that we've ever seen before. and all of our plans. Some of them haven't actually been implemented, and that's basically what caused us to be in this problem.
And it was a problem. I know you got a lot of heat, you got a lot of pressure, but let me tell you why I thought you were interesting to have you on, because you didn't shy away from it. I really like how Provo Water just stepped forward. I saw you in a rare moment, because you know he doesn't talk to us. This is a guy, as far as I'm aware, Mr. Hall is one who is very much behind the scenes and pushing his team forward, and they're speaking. And I guess only when really necessary, and this was one of those times. But when I saw you actually giving a statement over social media and issuing statements and showing the work that was going on, I had to respect that.
Well, I say usually when people come to me, it means that we have a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to shy away from the problem, right? That's my job. That's my responsibility. If there's an issue, we have to fix it. And so there's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to explain to people what the problem was and why we're in this problem.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not going to shy away from my job.
Yeah, and it is your job. I mean, you're the MD. You've had this role, I learned today, from 2007.
That's
and
correct.
when I think about it, when I came to TCI, you were just freshly in that role.
That's
And
correct.
so this is probably one of the biggest challenges you've had to face.
Well, in all the years that we've operated, and I told you we've been operating since 1997, January 1997, we've never had to do water restrictions in all of that time. So this is the first time. And there are a number of reasons that have contributed to that. So starting back during the pandemic, after the pandemic, things were slow to happen. There was a huge challenge with getting materials and
Yes.
a whole
Okay. Yeah.
supply chain issues. So it took us a while to get materials. And then we've also had issues with being able to get contractors to do certain works. Even during the COVID, we delayed some projects because it was just not the right time to do those projects. And after that, then things just kind of exploded.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some other challenges. Projects have to go through an approvals process. So the combination of all these things kind of caught
Just
us
sort of snowball.
basically.
Yeah.
But it's always been our intention to make sure that we could have the infrastructure in place ahead of any huge demand. And it just so happens that we didn't do that this go round.
Tell me again how much water we were using.
Just this last month, we used upwards of 72 million gallons. So basically, that's about 2 point something gallons per day that that the island is using.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge increase from where we were, just 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're seeing lots of peaks, and those peaks are not just higher, but the demand is going for longer periods as more and more people come to the island because of its popularity, and the growth is tremendous. So the more people we have, the more water obviously we have to supply based on the demand.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about what that demand was like, and how Mr. Hall, Robert Hall, and the team at Provo Water Company actually had to come up with a plan so that we had at least water for some parts of the day.
How do I know if I am squatting on Crown land? If you do not have any official documentation from the land registry demonstrating your title to the land, it is likely that you are squatting. If you are unsure, you should check the property ownership records at the land registry or hire a professional surveyor or an attorney to determine the legal status of the land. It is essential to ensure you have the right to occupy and use the property to avoid legal issues. For more information, call the Informal Settlement Unit 344-0478 or visit their website and follow on their social media.
Elevate your healthcare experience with InterHealth Canada Turks and Caicos Islands Hospital's MyCare Corner portal and mobile application. Request an email registration invitation at mycarecorner@interhealthcanada.tc to enjoy personalized care features like appointment reminders, lab results, medical information, and secure messaging.
Deandrea Hamilton Presents is a show where I sort of look at the landscape of what's happening, not just in the Turks and Caicos Islands and the Bahamas, my home countries, but around the region in particular, focusing on the professional people who are stepping up to the plate, the good times and the bad times, the sad times and the overwhelming times. Robert Hall is an example of the overwhelming times and the good times, because the Turks and Caicos Islands is just experiencing an uncommon growth trend that just is not letting up. For the last 3 years, ever since, I guess people say, okay, so the cabin fever, it's working and travelers are coming, and with the travelers are there is that need for not just hotel rooms, but also villa rentals, which are extremely popular. And Mr. Hall tells us that's a part of the demand. And then of course you gotta staff these things. And so you have people who actually need homes, and all of this is working together, and it created quite a conundrum for us during the peak season of the Turks and Caicos. You were in a room, you had to make this tough decision, do a lock off, water restrictions, because we want to at least make sure people have water for some parts of the day. How did that go?
So here's the challenge. So generally we supply from our facility in Grace Bay. So the Grace Bay plant produces the water, and we pump that water through the pipelines that are under Leeward Highway towards a pump station that's near Caicos Lodge, the Pablo's laundromat. Mm-hmm. And from there, that water is pumped to the tank behind Fortis TCI. Mm-hmm. And so that tank supplies basically everything west of that area. So what happens is, generally to the daytime, that tank empties as demand happens, and then overnight we fill it back up.
Right.
What has been happening is that overnight we've not been able to fill that tank back up. Wow. Because the demand has just been that great.
Just depleted so much of it.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. And so in order to preserve that stock of water, we've had to turn down the valve that supplies out of that tank to make sure that the tank can fill, so that next day we have enough water to continue operations during the daytime. If we had not done that, we would have been in the sore position where we would not have been able to supply during the daytime.
Wow. So at nighttime, we couldn't do anything extreme. Tell me specifically what you asked the residents to I guess basically endure so that we could have
there are two aspects of this. They're the people who are not affected by the restrictions. Mm-hmm. So they're the people who are upstream of the tank, the tank behind Fortis, and then there's the people who are downstream of it. The people who are upstream of it can help by reducing their water usage so that we can get more water into the tank during the nighttime. Mm-hmm. And then the people who are downstream of it, we have to be understanding that they're the ones that are most impacted by this. Mm-hmm. And so we're asking for them to be patient with us as we get this problem fixed, and understand that we know that it's an inconvenience, and we're trying as quickly as we can to resolve this problem. It is never any utility's desire to not be able to meet the demand and to not be able to fulfill its services. Mm-hmm. So that's far from what we're doing here. It actually upsets everyone when we can't fulfill what our duties are.
Yeah, absolutely. Does it cost you money? I mean, do you lose money because we're not using water?
Well, we're not making any money.
You're not making any money.
That's happening. So yeah.
So it costs you money, and it costs us inconvenience, and you were asking people for, I think it was between was it 7 to 5 a.m.
So the restrictions were happening generally between 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and 5:30 in the morning.
Right.
So we turn off the pumps during that time, and we'd have to turn down the valve that controls the flow out of the tank. Mm-hmm. For the past few weeks, we've actually not been turning down the valve. We've only been turning off the pump. Yeah. So in essence, we've kind of lightened up on the restrictions. Mm-hmm. And that's going to happen based on how the demand goes.
Is there anything that can happen to help you fill that? Like, we don't have hardly any rain in the Turks and Caicos. We're pretty much an arid type of topography and climate, even though we do have the tropics.
Yes.
So we're not very tropical in terms of rain. So can you catch more rainwater? Can we do more reverse osmosis?
Yeah, so the challenge isn't our capacity to make water. The challenge is our capacity to move it across the island. So there are two ways to ultimately address this problem, right?
Okay.
One is you put in bigger pipelines in the ground.
Yeah.
Or two, you constructed an additional production facility to make the water.
Yeah, to make water.
What we have learned in our engineering studies is that it's more cost effective for us to build a secondary plant to the northwest side of the island that would supply that side of the island and allow Grace Bay to supply the eastern side of the island. And that's more cost effective than digging up the roads and putting in bigger pipelines. And actually that is the plan that we have in place and the one that we intend to execute very shortly.
Okay, and so basically the pandemic, beyond the obvious pains that we went through during it, with the supply chain, the difficulty in getting workers and getting workers back up and running, still impacting us today.
Well, yes, it's still an impact today. But let me tell you about the three immediate things that we're doing to address this situation, other than the water restrictions. So we've got 3 projects on the go right now as we speak.
Okay.
One of them is increasing the pipeline that's coming out of the production plant in Grace Bay towards Leeward Highway, towards the roundabout by Crackpot Kitchen. So that's in progress as we speak, and we hope to have that completed by the end of this month. Okay. The second thing is along Leeward Highway, when the initial pipeline went in 1998-99, they also put in a lot of reduced sizes on the pipeline. So it's meant to be a 10-inch pipeline, but in many places, and especially where there are side roads, there are a 6-inch pipe. So just imagine the limit that we have here is what can go through a 6-inch, not what can go through a 10-inch. So until we remove all of those restrictions, we're working with a 6-inch pipeline rather than a 10-inch pipeline. So we're going to be doing that for the rest of the summer and hope to have that completed by September. And the third thing is, I mentioned earlier about the pump station at by Pablo's Laundromat. So that pump station, we're going to improve that pump station to obviously improve the capacity of the pressure across the island.
Okay. This is taking a lot of work. You got the manpower? You have to bring people
There are things that we currently have the manpower to do, but there are other larger projects as well that we have to take into consideration too.
We're going to take a break because I want to hear who's helping Provo Water Company make this happen. I don't know if Mr. Hall is going to tell me, but I'm going to ask him.
There is simply nowhere else in the Turks and Caicos Islands that you can find such a wholesome variety of your favorite fresh foods. There is simply nowhere else in the Turks and Caicos Islands that you can find such outstanding service. And there is simply nowhere else in the TCI to answer your every food craving in a chic, comfortable, centrally located store. That's a place you can trust. Number 1 is Graceway IGA. Fresh, service, trust for over 20 years.
As a man who loves spending time with family, does whatever it takes to keep my wife happy, and works hard to grow a successful business, it is important for me to stay on top of my game. With Flow's new family plans, I get to keep all my favorite things in one place. With 80 gigabytes of data to share with up to 4 family members and unlimited local anywhere talk and text, I get one bill that covers my entire family for as low as $60 per line and no surprise charges. All I had to do was add my home internet to my mobile, switch to Flow for more savings and more value. Flow helps me look out for my family's greatest needs, keep my customers happy, stay connected to everything I love, and have more time for the right things.
From the house opening to the deal closing and all that happens in between, we are real estate pros who never settle until our clients are settled. We know the school districts, the shopping districts, and the you gotta live there districts. Over 50 years ago, we put ourselves on the real estate map, then totally changed the landscape. Today, we're more than 140,000 strong, with each pair of hands building a legacy and shaping our tomorrow. This is our time, and this is our century.
We're here with Mr. Robert Hall. He is the managing director of Provo Water Company in the Turks and Caicos Islands. They serve Providenciales only and the surrounding islands, maybe one day, but coming through and still going through a challenging time. His engineering studies, I'm sure, are really, the muscles are flexing in that area, I'm sure, Mr. Hall. Talk to me about, when you're sitting around this table, I guess I can go imagining it that way. You're thinking about all of the things you have to do, and you talked about 3 solutions that you have. You're working diligently toward. They're going to be quite laborious. You need people,
Yes.
and you need money, and
Yes.
you need a lot of support, probably.
Yes.
What role does, let's say, a government play in this? And then we'll talk about what role maybe the consumer plays in all of this.
Okay. So here's how government plays a role in the setup of the company. So government really acts as the regulator. If there are any increases in rates or changes in rates, those have to be approved by government. And to an extent that we're investing into the company and that's going to affect the rates, government is also involved in how those projects happen. So that's the extent to which government is.
Do they give
involved.
do they give concessions on things that you bring in for these
We
expansion?
do have a 50% concession in our development order.
Okay.
And so all the pipelines and all the material that is used for the water supply is brought in at a concessionary rate.
What about work permits in the event that you do need them? Because you're talking about 3 big projects from my understanding and from where I sit. You might need outside help.
We might do, especially when we consider the big project that I mentioned, which is the Northwest plant. To the extent that we're just as any other company when it comes to work permits. There's no special privilege.
No expedited process.
Not well. We have no special.
You have
privilege.
to apply.
We have to apply
And you have to
as
wait for due
everyone
process.
as everyone would have to.
Okay. So you can't just say, well, this is urgent, this is a big deal. Can we see this move through quickly? Because I don't know these days what's happening, but you often hear the comments that it is a pretty slow process.
We
sometimes.
don't have any privileges, but I'm sure if there was something that government wanted to expedite and they thought that it was warranted their involvement, they would do that.
Okay, good. And you have to communicate with the government on this current issue situation. You're in
Definitely.
dialogue with them regularly.
We send an update to the Energy and Utilities Department every week.
Okay, interesting. Wow. So what about the consumer now? What about the consumer? What do we do? I heard you sort of sneak in just a little intimation toward conservation.
Yes.
I know that's one thing we can do for sure.
It's a big thing that we can do, actually. And if more of us were doing it, we'd be able to get through this a lot sooner. But while we may be under a critical time, that may not be the reality for other persons, and it might be just life as normal for them. So everyone is going to continue to wash their vehicles as they have been doing before and watering their lawns as they have been before, because if I don't see that it's impacting me, I don't really see the need for changing my behaviors. So I think that's one way that the rest of the island can help, and that's certainly where you can reduce your usage so that we can help.
So everybody can enjoy.
That's correct.
That's
correct.
Because water is in so many places a privilege.
Yes, and that's only till we get to where we need to be in terms of the 3 projects that I mentioned to you. And ultimately, the solution to this problem is going to be the plant to the northwest, which we hope to have in place within the next couple of years.
Really? Okay, so in another 2 years, we will see that plant that will assist with making sure that this kinds of I guess, up and down.
Absolutely. We'll start doing some type of work on that before the year is out.
Right.
Yeah.
What about this infrastructure here near the bank? Is that you as well?
So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So that's one of the things that was supposed to be a future project, but we thought it needed to be fast tracked.
Right.
And the reason for that was because on the island, while we have adequate storage for operations purpose, we don't have adequate storage for emergency purposes. And this was revealed in one of the master plans that we had produced. And so rather than continue to go through hurricane seasons and the like without that in place, we thought it was prudent to make sure that that tank was in place.
Yeah.
And it's also helped us during this particular period as well. So what we can do with that tank is at times we can use it to boost the Susie Turn tank, which is the one behind Fortis TCI.
Right.
We can supplement the water from downtown to that tank to help us during any crunch time. So it's useful having it for that.
I think one of the things I found curious was that the water shortage was more toward the west. I was thinking because Grace Bay is busier, it has way more numbers in terms of guests coming in, that would be where water runs out. Why? What's my understanding?
So I'll take you
Am
back
I thinking right when I think about it that way?
I'll take you back to how we supply, and I said that that tank supplies really the west of the island. So we fill that tank, and then the water comes out of that tank and goes to the west of the island. So we actually have to pump that water from Grace Bay to that tank. Whereas in Grace Bay, the pumping facility pumps directly to each of the resorts.
So it's at home.
So
it's in the home
so that
neighborhood.
would include Grace Bay and Long Bay Hills, the Long Bay area, Juba Sound, everything up to the pump station that's located by Pablo's Laundromat would be supplied from the Grace Bay.
What has been the backlash from the customers? What are they saying? Do you find that you were surprised and you got understanding? Or do you find that you got rowdy people who were just frustrated and there was no appeasing them?
I think there's been a mix. I think the majority of people have been very understanding and have expressed that to us and have said, look, this is something that we've experienced in places that we've lived, other than Turks and Caicos. But of course, you're always going to have people whom they're going to be very inconvenienced because maybe they don't have a backup cistern or they don't have an alternative means of their water supply, and Provo water is the only thing that they have. So that's going to be more inconvenient to that household than it is to any other type of household. So they're going to be more agitated about that. So there was probably more backlash in the initial announcement, although now I think it's kind of it's died down a bit.
Yeah. And what has Provo Water done for customer satisfaction in that area?
So other than the press releases that we've sent out, we've also been engaging people more with our social media, and just to let them know what's happening and to make sure that they're up to date in terms of where things are. The people who work for Provo Water Company are also frustrated by the restrictions, right? Because it affects them too. And the person who has to turn off that valve is also being affected by the restriction. And so they understand that we're only absolutely going to do this when it's necessary. So whenever the night comes and we decide that, no, we don't need to do it today, we don't do it. And so there are many days that we have not done it because we didn't think it was warranted. And that will continue as we go through, the summer.
Is it fair to expect a financial compensation, customers? Do you think that's something that people okay, I don't get to have it 24 hours, so can you give me $1 back?
Well, generally speaking, no, because we're not causing, I think there are cases that maybe, people could argue it, but we're not causing people to generally lose revenue. And I could be challenged on that because people might say, yeah, you are causing us to lose revenue, but we'll look at that and consider it on a case-by-case basis. But generally, no, there's no compensation that's necessarily going to be given for this difficulty.
Right, and it is difficult. I mean, like I said, I think I appreciated that you spoke, you seemed to just approach it in a way that I felt like, okay, wow, this really caught, and it's happening everywhere. We mentioned this before we started the cameras rolling, that we are being overwhelmed at our ports, we are being overwhelmed in our schools, we're in a housing crisis. I mean, every minute you see somebody's looking for somewhere to live. We see the traffic. And so there's a lot that's happening. Does Provo Water, is there a convening of minds talking about how do we deal with all of these overwhelming...
Yeah, there is. So I mentioned earlier, there's a water master plan that we produce, and this is produced from by a company, an engineering firm in the U.S., Kansas City. And they take the data that we have, and we have very good data because of our AMI system. And they also visit here, so they speak with the stats department, they speak with planning, they speak with, all the relevant players to make sure that we have the most current data to make accurate projections of future growth and water demand. And their projections have been really good. And so I wouldn't say that this current issue has caught us off guard. It's definitely come a lot quicker than we anticipated, but it's almost like a yearly occurrence where we go through the peak season, and it happens every year. The demand gets really high, and we have to pay attention to that and think about what the next move is going to be if we get to a day where we can't refill the supply tanks.
And I see that even the Ministry of Tourism is now saying June and July will be as flat as we thought. 80,000 visitors.
Well,
at the airports.
We've seen this since the pandemic. Typically, our peak day has historically been in the months of either March or April.
Right.
And now we're seeing peaks in June and July as well.
Yeah.
And they're worse than the March and April peaks.
Yeah,
so
it's summer. It's summer break.
So I just want to put people on notice that we've got to go through that as well. So that will warrant possibly another round of restrictions.
Yeah.
Until we get those projects sorted out.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, Mr. Hall is going to tell me if Provo Water Company is thinking about hiking our water bills. I only just thought of that because he said he has 3 big projects. You're watching Deandrea Hamilton Presents.
From the house opening to the deal closing and all that happens in between, we are real estate pros who never settle until our clients are settled. We know the school districts, the shopping districts, and the you gotta live there districts. Over 50 years ago, we put ourselves on the real estate map, then totally changed the landscape. Today, we're more than 140,000 strong, with each pair of hands building a legacy and shaping our tomorrow. This is our time, and this is our century.
Moving money from one site to the next, lots of cash transactions make you vulnerable? Need eyes on your investments no matter where you are? Are you looking for professional security escorts for your high net worth guests? Want to support Neighborhood Watch with skilled patrols? Sounds like you need security solutions at Spence Security Services. Established in the Turks and Caicos since 1998. Get armored truck escort services from $150 and contact Spence Security for free consultation. Dependable, professional service you can trust. That's Spence Security. We interviewed Provo Water Company's Managing Director Robert Hall in early May, mere hours after explaining why there had to be a rationing of water with planned water disruptions to hundreds of homes and businesses during the months of March, April, and May. There came the notice that despite hopes the service could return to normal in June and July, that would not be the case. Lock-offs would continue as demand outpaces supply.
The Turks and Caicos Islands is seeing incredible growth, especially in the tourism sector, resulting in unprecedented water usage. In March of this year, we were forced to implement nightly water restrictions to certain areas along the western side of the island. This was because our distribution network at the time was unable to refill the Susie Turn Reservoir on a nightly basis.
It now has residents fuming, Angered by the protracted inconvenience, frustrated by the inconsistency in when water is restored on a morning-to-morning basis, pointing fingers at the company's apparent lack of readiness, and others recommending storing water in jugs and buckets or filling water tanks as mitigation until water regeneration can keep up. Provo Water Company is not happy either. The company says it will continue to give updates and reports on its efforts. They are now regularly explaining how a horrible situation has as its only short-term fix restrictions, which last from late night to early morning in many communities, unfortunately and literally leaving hundreds of people high and dry.
We hoped to end the water restrictions by the end of May of this year. However, as we are still in the midst of our improvement projects and still seeing extremely high water demand, that date has now been re-evaluated, and the water restrictions will need to stay in effect until the end of July on an as-needed basis. We deeply understand and empathize with the inconvenience this will cause.
Later, why this is happening in detail, what assistance is coming from government, and the long-term plan for sufficient and reliable water from Provo Water Company. Deandrea Hamilton Presents was filmed at Beaches, Turks and Caicos, an amazing all-inclusive luxury resort featuring 5 magnificent villages boasting the architecture and ambiance of Italy, France, the Caribbean, and Key West, all in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Thank you, Beaches, for your world-class hospitality.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Hall, for being here. We know that your company is going through a lot, so you squeezing us into your day it's really appreciated. Thank you so much. Give all of the shout outs and hail to your team. I haven't seen them for a while. I know they're busy still doing community work.
Yeah.
They haven't allowed this challenge to stop that kind of outreach,
correct.
and that's very commendable. We know that now this is going to cost you infrastructurally to, like you say, fast track a lot of projects. Because of the overwhelming interest and intrigue and allure of our beautiful Turks and Caicos Islands. Will this ultimately be costing us anytime soon in terms of those who are subscribers to Provo Water Company?
So as I mentioned earlier, our rates are always approved by government, and
Right.
the rates are actually governed by a formula that includes parameters like manpower and energy. So there are some things that we're thinking about in terms of how we can reduce rates, and energy consumption is one of those areas that we're looking at. I mentioned the project that we have in Northwest Point, and one of the things we wanted to do there was to build a solar farm in conjunction with that plant as a means of considering how we can reduce
Offset,
the energy cost.
Yeah.
To reduce rates. And also the projects that we have on stream, they could have an impact on rates. I don't suspect that it's going to be a huge impact, but the formula is ultimately going to decide what that impact is going to be. It may not be anything at all. As a matter of fact, whenever we've had to do any increases within the last at least 10 years, we've shied away from it because we just didn't think it was the right time to pass those increases on to our consumers. Whenever a reduction has happened and the formula warranted a reduction, we definitely passed.
So you're
that
quicker to
on
rush
rates.
toward the reductions.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
less hasty
Less-
toward the increase.
That's right.
That's good. That's good. That's really good. And so in terms of now we're going into you already gave us a little warning. Summer is not going to be what maybe we thought it was, because now we're hearing that the bookings are showing an increase over our usually high season.
Yes.
So we may be going through a rough summer, and summer is hot. We're going to be wanting to take
Yes.
more cold showers. How do we conserve? How do we still get it all done?
Well, I'm glad you raised that question, because one of the things I want to highlight is on Wednesday of this week, as part of our Drinking Water Week, we held a seminar to address that very issue. And it would have been really good if there were so many more people that attended. It was an online webinar, so
Okay.
it was open to the public. And we talked there about things that people can do and the ways in which we've implemented tools that can help people. So we have, as I mentioned, an AMI system, and part of that is making everything digital and available to customers online so that they can track and monitor their own consumption and see when there's a problem. So if you have a leak, you can monitor that on your PC, and you can take action on it.
Yes.
Because leaks contribute towards wastage, and that also contributes towards not having enough water to fill the tank.
Right.
And so if people can take action on that kind of thing, it would significantly help us to address some of the issues that we're seeing currently. But this summer is going to be one that we haven't seen before, and I fully anticipate that we're going to see another peak. We saw a peak last year of 78 million gallons.
Wow.
And I'm expecting that we're going to surpass that this year.
My goodness. Keeping you guys on your toes.
Well, it definitely is. I mean, I don't think we're unique. I think it's also being experienced by the other utilities across the island. And the challenges are almost the same.
Yeah. Well, keep the information coming, and we'll continue to keep you all in good thoughts, because at the end of the day, there's no point in gloating, I guess, about anything that may not be going well, because it really is water we're talking about. Everybody needs it. It's vital. And so as quick as we could see things done, what do people do if they want to talk to you, if they want to communicate with Provo Water Company?
We have loads of means for getting in touch with us. We've got social media platforms, Facebook. People can call the office. There's the customer service center that would receive emails. So we're accessible. I'm a very accessible person if people need to reach me, and I'm happy to answer any questions that folks may have, or to do this sort of engagement, and you have a wider audience to speak to and get the information out to people. So
well, just happy to have you here. I know you guys are accessible. Their customer service is also very, very good. I've had the opportunity to work with that team for personal and home issues as well. So I can tell you just reach out and let's see what we can do to conserve this water, because it is life. It is the juice of life.
Yeah.
And we definitely need to do our part to make sure that this summer is as bearable as it can be, given that we are in really a unique situation in the Turks and Caicos Islands that is frustrating for sure, but also really good. It speaks well to what we are, what we offer to the world, and they're coming running. They're coming running. Thank you, Mr. Hall, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Provo Water Company, this is the managing director, and we have been just so pleased to have him with us to talk about some of the challenges and how he's overcoming those with his team. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.